is happening, people? Here's your opposition preview. It's Frankfurt versus Tottenham, and it's game week 8 in the Champions League phase, the final one. So this should be really good. Of course, huge game for Tottenham, huge game for Thomas Frank in particular. I'm delighted to be joined for this opposition preview by Philip King, who's a big part of South Germany Spurs. Philip, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, how are you doing? And secondly, please talk to people all about you and what you do, because you do some fantastic work.
Thanks, Harry. And thanks for having me on to do this. It's always a pleasure. I'm originally from the UK, originally from Berkshire, just west of London. But I moved over to Germany originally for work, probably the first time 20 years ago. Then I kind of returned 15 years ago. Ended up staying here, meeting my wife, who's from Frankfurt. So we live in Frankfurt, obviously. Been there for a number of years. Big Spurs fan, obviously, since I was a kid. So I've been a Spurs fan now for, 37 years, something like that. Obviously, over that time, it's been a big roller coaster, up and downs as we're all used to at Spurs. Hopefully good times are ahead again coming. We obviously won a trophy last season as well, which was quite nice. But yeah, I've been here for a while and I've adopted Eintracht Frankfurt kind of as my second team. Obviously my local team here in Germany, here in the Bundesliga. Only takes me about 20 minutes to get to the stadium. So I've watched a lot of games over the last 10 years live. Used to have a season ticket here at Frankfurt. I've got a membership now, same as what I've got at Spurs. So obviously get to watch a lot of games as well. Managed to see Oliver Glasner work his magic here a couple of years ago and obviously win the Europa League as well with Frankfurt, which was an amazing achievement at the time. And funnily enough, Eintracht Frankfurt and Tottenham are kind of quite similar clubs in terms of their history and their standing, like in their respective countries and in Europe. Frankfurt have won, a couple of European trophies in total. I think 2 UEFA Cups. The Cup winners, obviously Spurs have won a number of UEFA Cups and Cup winners and stuff. So, we're actually quite similar on that. I think Frankfurt have won 2 league titles in their history. Same as Spurs, we've won 2 league titles. And we've got a really, really traditional, base of football fans, in each country and very loyal away fans. So probably it kind of helped that Frankfurt are very similar to Spurs in terms of adopting them. Obviously being here anyways helps. The other thing is, funny enough, in Germany, just to give a bit of an overview on Frankfurt and top, Frankfurt have had the historical kind of joke name given to them, the Diva from the Main River. And Frankfurt lies on the Main River, and they call them the Diva because things always go wrong, or things always go well, and then they kind of go wrong suddenly when you don't expect it, and then they go into a valley of despair, and it takes them a few years to get out of it, and then they go up again. And again, that's kind of a bit similar to Tottenham, right? And I
love that though. That's great.
Spurs, I don't like using the Spursy tag, but it kind of fits a bit to it, So I always talk to the Eintracht fans here, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, my English team, Tottenham. Well, yeah, I know how you're feeling because it's kind of, I've been there, done that. But yeah, so I've been here a long time, so I support obviously Frankfurt, but Tottenham are my first love, and will always be my first love. So tomorrow for the game, I'm going to be in the away, sitting with all of us away fans on the terraces. It's going to be interesting. It's obviously the 3rd time that Spurs have played in Frankfurt in the last 3 seasons, right? I think it's like literally 3 years in a row. So hopefully we're going to get a good result like last season. But yeah, it should be very interesting. Should be very good.
Yeah, it definitely should be. Philip, thank you for joining me for this one. Appreciate your little intro there. For people listening on YouTube, please subscribe if you're new. For listening via audio podcast platform, drop us a follow and a 5-star review. If you think I sound funny or look funny, don't worry. Nothing dramatically wrong, just with the flu at the moment. So I haven't lost my marbles or anything like that. Well, I hope not yet anyway. But Philip, let's crack straight to that and talk about Frankfurt. Of course, you say there in your own words, your second team that you've adopted. What have been your thoughts on the season so far? Because of course, as Spurs fans, we could do a little bit of research, we could look at the table, look at results, but the reality is there's more to anything than stats. You have to watch Frankfurt, and you would have watched Frankfurt. I know that you have in quite a few games. So, what have you made of them? Do you think the score lines and stats reflect how they've actually been playing and performing?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, to summarise, Frankfurt probably started the season off in a better position, really. You know, they had a very good season last season, qualifying for the Champions League, through the league. At times last season, they were even higher in the league, and people thought that they might be able to finish second, possibly last season. So they were flying high, playing really good attacking football last season. The manager who was fired about 10 days ago, Dino Topmuller, he was a highly rated young German manager, progressive kind of manager, likes to play sort of pressing football in the Klopp mould. So when he came in to follow on from Glasner as well, who left after winning, the Europa League, there was a bit of pressure on him. And funny enough, Topmuller's first season here was pretty poor. I think he finished 8th or 9th in his first season, playing very disjointed football. And they actually believed in him. They signed Ekitike, obviously for peanuts, relatively speaking, I think 15, 20 million. They had signed Marmoush before that on a free transfer, I think, at that point. And, it kind of all turned around, and Frankfurt had this amazing season last season. So they did well to trust in the manager in that case, actually, right, for the second season, and it worked out. But this season, it's been a real struggle for the team. They sold Ekitike, obviously, to Liverpool in the summer for a massive profit. I can't remember how much it was, but like 85, 90 million, something like that. Marmoush obviously left last January. I think he already left, didn't he? He left in the January transfer window, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I swear. I think it's January. It's gone quick, I know.
Yeah, and that was obviously a massive fee as well. And so, it's been a struggle this season. And, I think you got to feel a bit for the manager who's no longer here now, because obviously he lost Ekitike and Marmoush from his team. And arguably they didn't really replace them, at least not with top quality. They invested some money in the summer into the players. Obviously, Frankfurt's got a reputation, together with the sporting director, Marcus Crusher, right, who's probably rated as probably the best up-and-coming sporting director in Europe, based on the fact, or his track record of buying in, cheap talent and obviously selling them for a big, big profit. And I guess that's what they kind of tried to do last summer, that no one has really landed quickly, like the players that have been brought in. They lost the keeper to Paris FC last summer, Kevin Trapp, who is a very good keeper, obviously played for Germany. Highly rated, played for Germany for many years, mainly as a backup, obviously, to Neuer and Ter Stegen. But still, world-class keeper, fan favourite here. And often a captain as well of the club. So he left in the summer. And, they started the season off all right, but they weren't scoring enough goals. And one thing which the manager this season has absolutely not managed to sort out, or anyone managed to sort out, is the defence. So, Frankfurt's defence, in terms of them leaking goals and conceding very stupid goals, has been awful this year, and they've not managed to come up with any kind of solution in terms of making the team more stable. And it's not like they're playing Ange ball, coming forwards, right? Meaning that they're leaving gaps behind. It's just a bad defence, which when you consider that they've actually got still pretty much the same defence that they had last season, and if you look at the individual players in the defence, a bit like our defence, Harry, like if you look at the individuals, right, they're top quality. We've got Porro, Van der Ven, Romero, Udogi, right? That's like top quality. But still, we're conceding goals, aren't we, at Spurs at the moment? Stupid goals. It's the same thing at Frankfurt, but worse. They've got Robin Koch, who's a German international, right, ex-Leeds, who's centre-back. They've got Arthur Theater, who plays next to him. He's a very good Belgian international player, very good centre-back. They've got options on the right. That's probably their weak point in defence, on the right. And then they've got, obviously, the main man now, Nathaniel Brown, who plays left-back, who Tottenham have been linked with this window and in the summer last year. Real Madrid, Barcelona have been linked with him. He's just been called up to the German national team in October, and he's made his debut for Germany. And he's an amazing left-back, pacey, attacking, but solid defensively as well. So on paper, they've got a strong defence. The keeping situation has been a challenge as well. I don't know if anyone remembers the game last season when we won 1-0,
Yes.
I think, with the Madders penalty, wasn't it? Was it Madders penalty? I think so. I think so. I remember that their keeper, who's probably going to play tomorrow, is a young, highly rated Brazilian goalkeeper called Santos. And he's very good, but he's very inconsistent. He's a bit crazy, as a lot of Brazilian keepers are, to be honest, right? But he's although, to be fair, there's a lot of very good Brazilian keepers as well, right? Obviously, Alisson and Edison and people like this, right? But, he's a bit of a hot-headed character and a bit similar maybe to Vicario, great shot stopper, but on the line, on corners, on free kicks, ball at feet, not very good. And he gave away a penalty in the game last season against Spurs when he punched one of our players, didn't he, coming for a cross. So he's going to play. So long story short, Harry, they haven't managed to sort out the defence. And it got to the point where after the winter break, they came back and they hoped that they would, have worked on the defence, worked on the team, a bit of a rest. They come back with a bang. But unfortunately, it didn't work. And Frankfurt have now conceded 3 goals in each of their matches in January so far.
It looks, Philip, to chip in from an outside point of view, very underwhelming, if I may say. If we focus on this competition, the Champions League, Frankfurt are 33rd with 4 points from 7 games, which isn't good. And even in the Bundesliga, 8th place, 27 points from 19 games. And not only that, Philip, it's the form as well, which I was looking at before coming on here, which is concerning. So I'm just having a look here. Doesn't look like there's any wins in the last 6 for Frankfurt. So things like that, this is in all competitions. But either way, it's incredibly concerning, I think, because Frankfurt I associate as a big club and great players and a real force ultimately in German football. But it seems like they're really underwhelming and underperforming.
Yeah, the problem is, based on where Frankfurt performed last season and, the kinds of players that they had qualifying for the Champions League, obviously getting the money from the Champions League again. The fact that they won the Europa League 3 years ago, Frankfurt have been transformed over the last 5-6 years as well, right? They've got back from being a mid-table side over the last 25 years since they won their last trophies, a bit like Spurs, right? Frankfurt won a lot of trophies in the 80s. We did as well. Then we had obviously 25, 30 years, well, longer, right? 35 years for Spurs of hurt. Frankfurt kind of a bit similar, but then they won the German Cup 7 years ago. Then they won the Europa League. Step by step, Frankfurt have re-established themselves as a top 4 team in Germany. And people would have expected Frankfurt to move on from last season and finish in the Champions League spots again. And to be honest, do well in Europe, because Frankfurt, the same as Spurs, Harry, Frankfurt have a very proud European history. You know, like for the Frankfurt fans, there's nothing bigger than European nights under the lights. You know, and away. You know, all of the people will know this, but the Frankfurt fans, they go 20, 30,000 around Europe. You know, however they can get there, they get there somewhere. You know, they follow them over land and sea. And the European nights are one of the biggest things. And the fact that they couldn't get their form in the Champions League at all going this season, that contributed to the manager getting fired last week. Because if they were like in the top 10, 12, 15 in the Champions League, and they were a bit better in the league, like 6th or something, then I think they would have kept the manager and there would have been an argument, maybe they can still sneak into the Champions League qualification spots or Europa League, maybe get to the knockout of the Champions League, but they've been awful in Europe. They lost, I can't remember the results now, but I think they lost 2 games in the Champions League, like 5-0 this season. I think they lost to Barcelona 5-0. They lost to Atletico Madrid 5-0. They got thrashed in a lot of games in the Champions League. And again, that just goes into their defence not being up to par, right, up to speed. So yeah, very underwhelming and very concerning for the vast majority of proud Frankfurt fans that, to be honest, expected a lot more this season. So it's kind of weird because we are playing Frankfurt in their worst kind of shape that they've probably been in for a long time. Like, this is probably the worst Frankfurt team right now for at least the last 10 years, I'd say, if not 15 years, in terms of the current form and, lack of individual stars in the team, lack of confidence. And obviously they haven't got a manager. They haven't appointed a replacement manager yet, or even an interim. They've kind of got 2 caretaker managers. One of them's an ex-legend of the club, Alex Meyer, who is called the football god, Fußballgott, by the Frankfurt fans here. But since taking over from Tottenham, they've lost both games, conceding 3 goals to Karabag. They lost at the weekend 3-1 to Hoffenheim at home, who admittedly are flying high in the league this season, but they look a shadow of what they should be. So Spurs aren't good, are they, either? Obviously, we know that. We're in a much lower league position than Frankfurt, but we're obviously doing well in Europe so far. We've got better players than at Frankfurt, but we will never, from a Spurs perspective, we will never play a Frankfurt team in as bad a position as this.
You could flip it on its head. Will Frankfurt ever play a Spurs team in a dire state? That's the thing.
Well, arguably, last season we were in the same state, right? Because when we played,
yes,
when I think it was April last year, right? When we played in the Europa League here, when we won 1-0
that's true.
with that penalty or with that Madders goal.
But it never felt like we were going down in the league last year, did it? As bad as we were because of the teams below us. Whereas this year, let me be clear, I don't think we will, but we're 8 points from safety and we've got these tough games, City, Newcastle, United, the Arsenal, all these tough games. And you just go, hang on a minute, if these teams keep picking up points, where are we going to be after them? We're going to be 2 points, from safety, that kind of thing. So I know it's not the Champions League, but it feels like maybe we're in a slightly worse place. And then you're hearing news like Kinski might leave. So our squad's retracting very quickly.
You are right, Harry, about that. I think your last season, we weren't going to go down last season, were we? Because the teams at the bottom were that bad, right? And they were clearly much worse than us. And there was a gap in the end. And I think probably, even though there are a lot of fans who are anti-Ange, last season or in the second half of the season, including me, I still hoped that in individual games we might, kind of turn up and still get the points or actually play well again, despite obviously the injuries that we had. And we still had the positivity of being in the Europa League, right? And we knew that we probably could win the Europa League. Probably no one thought we would win the Europa League just because we don't really win anything, you know, but we still had the hope and the belief that we could win it, because looking at the other teams in there, it was really only United and, you know, maybe Bilbao who looked good right in there. Obviously, you know, now we're sinking in the league. You know, we're getting more and more injuries coming now. We're not getting results against small teams or anything. And as you say, there's rumours of players leaving us, and no real rumours about any new signings coming in. And also rumours of more injuries, you know, like Van der Ven or Porro not training today. So, yeah, you are right. Probably Frankfurt will never play actually a team that's in such a bad state. Both from a team perspective, but maybe also from a management perspective, because Frank is obviously in the mud, and arguably Vinay, Johan Lange, Paratici, Enoch, everyone's kind of not really performing, are they, at the moment?
And that's the thing. They say that they're aligned. You've got Frank saying, I don't want anyone else to leave, and Kinski could leave, Mwani could leave. That's the thing, not aligned in my view. But Philip, to read out some stats. So Spurs, of course, face Frankfurt Wednesday evening in the Champions League. So here's just some of our records against German opponents. So since first playing in European competition in 1961, we've played 33 matches against German opposition, facing 10 different sides. We met our first German test in 1974 in the shape of Cologne on the continent. We ran out 2-1 winners in the quarter-final of the UEFA Cup. So there we go. 2-0 winners last time out, as we know, Borussia Dortmund. That was match day 7 of the league phase. So of our 33 matches, we've come out on top 17 times. We've drawn 5 and lost 11. So there we go. And we've won 4 of our last 5 encounters with German opposition, 2 of which were against Wednesday's host, Eintracht, as we've spoken about. We're unbeaten in each of our last 6 such games as well against German opponents, which includes, quite a few different teams in there. So it's impressive. We haven't suffered defeat against the men's as well since 1982. So whatever looks really impressive. But of all our visits to Germany, which has been 17, we've come out on top on 7 occasions, losing 7 and drawing the other 3 times. So we've won on our last 2 trips to Germany, defeating Frankfurt 1-0, and then also against Hoffenheim, which had come 3 months earlier. So whatever way you look at it, it's really positive. So that's just some stats to read out there. But Philip, on this game, how do you see it going? Of course, based on those stats there for Tottenham, really positive against German opponents. Both teams struggling for form, struggling for performances, struggling for results. Frank, for example, under pressure. Get into score prediction after this, but as a Spurs fan now, of course, being your first club, how do you feel about this game? You mentioned rightly as well, Porro and Van der Ven. We haven't had the Frank press conference at the time of recording, but let's say they could be unavailable because they haven't trained, which is incredibly worrying because players like Dracasin, Gallagher, Tell are ineligible. So it could be really tough for Tottenham. So how do you feel going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we've played well in the Champions League, I would say, on occasion this season. I know we had some games actually away from home, maybe that we didn't play so well in. If you really go into detail, like the home games, we've obviously, smashed in the Champions League. Monaco away obviously wasn't very good. We probably should have lost that one by multiple goals. The game in Norway wasn't great either. Paris, obviously, PSG, we played quite well, but obviously still lost, giving away a lot of stupid goals again. But look, I mean, we tend to play well against German opposition over the last X amount of years, as you've highlighted there. The Bundesliga teams generally are a bit slower. The Bundesliga anyway isn't as hardcore pressing and fast as the Premier League. And, I would imagine that we'll get more time on the ball again, tomorrow compared to some other games that we've played away from home. People like Xavi Simons, I think he relishes playing against Bundesliga teams because obviously he was in the Bundesliga with Leipzig. He knows how they play. He knows he's going to get a bit more time. And, as we know, he kind of ran the game, didn't he, against Dortmund last week? So I think, if you look at the form of Frankfurt and the fact that they've conceded 3 goals every game now in January, despite the challenges that we have at the moment, you'd have to really think that we're going to turn up knowing that with a win, that we qualify automatically, right? Top 8. You'd have to think that we'll turn up and win this game. Even with some of those injuries, I think. If you bear in mind how, I know we didn't win at the weekend in Burnley, and there was a lot of criticism again about the performance in some shape or form, but we did have an XG of like 2 point something against Burnley, and we had all those shots, didn't we, in the game? It was the most shots on target that we'd had for 2 years. Their keeper did make a lot of saves, and we should have won it against Burnley. If we're being honest, we should have won that game, despite it being hard, far from a dream performance. But we should have won that game, and we did beat Dortmund before that, and we should have won that game more. We should have scored more than 2 goals against Dortmund. So it's not like we're creating 0 XG. The last couple of games, the XG is going a bit higher. So I think that as long as, and again, we can't predict this, unfortunately, because we don't know that we've got the consistency. But if we go out there and we play on the front foot, at the beginning of the game, and we get after the Frankfurt defence, we should score goals. We should score goals against this Frankfurt defence.
Yeah.
So I'm confident about it. Even if Van der Ven is injured and Porro, I guess Spence plays on the right. Udogie seems to be fit, I think, to play tomorrow. So Udogie can start on the left.
Yeah.
And then probably just Danzo comes in and, we play about 4. Or he sticks with his 3 at the back, which probably would fit better, in my opinion, like he did in the last 2 games, where we did look a bit better. And he can play Udogie potentially as a left. Well, I was going to say he can play him as a left centre-back like he did against Dortmund, but then we don't have a left wing-back. So, I don't know, actually. I'll leave that to Frank.
Yeah, we leave it to Frank, exactly. Part of me thinks, and I do believe, I'd rather see the academy than A, players aren't performing, or B, players out of position. Like, in my view, and I could be wrong about this, but Colin Wani, of course, no league goals. This isn't the league, but still no league goals. I think he's now not putting the effort in my view. I think his head's elsewhere. I think, Dortmund, when he come off the bench, to me, I didn't see 110% commitment. Might have been a bad day, might have not felt great, whatever it may be. It didn't look great in my point of view. But the point is, I don't believe in putting square pegs and kind of round holes. I'd rather say to your Byfields or whoever it may be, your Luca Williams Barnett, your Dane Scarlett, come on and let's have a few minutes. And that's my argument. I'd personally, for example, terminate Moani's loan and then say to Tell, look, we're going to keep you and not send you out on loan. We're going to keep you happy by giving you more minutes, not all the time, but let's say every other week you play in the striker position and you'll get more minutes as a result. And also say to Scarlett, look, instead of sending you out on loan again, whenever you've come on, you've actually impressed most of the time you score. Let's give you more minutes. So I'd have it a pecking order that let's forget about Richarlison because he's out for a long while. So for now, in my eyes, it would be boom, number 1 would be Solanke. And right now, because of all the injuries and that, Tell's got to play on the wing. There's Scarlett's on the bench and should get a lot more minutes. So realistically, of course, you'd love to see us sign a striker, but we're not going to do that. So I just think there's no point having like 5 strikers here, but not really having the quality and they just battle for minutes. But again, that's just personally my view. But Philip, something interesting here. So this is Thomas Frank's Tottenham as things stand. So in the Premier League, as you know all of this, but 14th in the table, right? 8 points away from the relegation zone, but only 9 points away from Europe. So it depends if your glass half full or half empty. 19th best home form in the Premier League. So that's 19th out of 20th. So that's the second worst home form in the Premier League, but the fourth best away Premier League form, which is interesting. And it's been the first or second. It's dropped down to fourth, but still, if it's based on away form, would be inside the top four. But in the Champions League, it flips on its head. Instead of being 14th in the table, we're fifth in the Champions League table. So complete contrast. But not only that, first for home form, we have the best home form in the Champions League. But the away form's not there. 27th best away form. It's just like the polar opposite in terms of where we are in the table and home and away form. Philip, what's going on? Why can't we get a result at home in the Premier League? Like Nuno's won more games at our stadium as West Ham manager. He's won as any manager. He's won more games at the Tottenham Stadium since April 2021 than we've won there in the league, which is just horrifying. And in the Champions League, we can't stop winning at home. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a typical Spurs stat, isn't it? Like zero consistency, Spursy games, unpredictability. What I would say is I think, in the Champions League, in the home games, and admittedly, I don't think that we've played anyone like super great at home, apart from like Dortmund, probably the biggest team that we've played at home this season in the Champions League. And if I'm being honest, I don't think that they really turned up. If I look at it kind of critically, like it didn't look like Dortmund had a lot of energy. They didn't really go after us. And I think in the Champions League anyway, you see a lot of like teams come to White Lane and they don't press. They don't press us. Dortmund sat off. They didn't press us. They didn't get in our faces. They didn't make us, rush passes, lose the ball. Maybe a bit more in the second half, but not generally. Who else did we play at home? Was it Copenhagen we played at home?
Yes, we did, yeah.
The 4-0, I think it was, wasn't it? The same. They stood off us. It was an easy game for us to play. Lots of time on the ball. I think in the Champions League, the teams that have come to the lane, they haven't got in our faces like the Premier League teams have done, even if they've been lower league opposition. And maybe the players are just that bit more up for the Champions League somehow. It's not an excuse. It shouldn't be an excuse for the players, but maybe, under the lights, at the lane, with the Champions League, him, blaring out, it's an escape from the reality of the league where, we often come up against teams that just press us to death, get in our faces physically, and we just can't seem to deal with it. We lose composure, we can't pass the ball. We get stuck ever deeper, in our half. So that would be a bit of an argument from my side, a bit of analysis as to why in the Champions League it works a bit easier. However, when we've gone away in the Champions League, we haven't looked great. Right? We haven't looked great. Teams have pressed us more when they've been at home randomly, right, in the Champions League. Admittedly, the teams that we've played away have been better as well, probably, than the teams that we played at home. Paris, PSG, you're not really going to get a result there, really. Certainly not Spurs at the moment. Monaco, you'd like to think you could get a result there, but they dominated us and we were awful in that game. Could have lost that game 4-0 easily. That was the game where Vicario just saved kind of everything, didn't he? So yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but like it just fits our season, Like we don't know what we're going to get when we kind of go out there, Like at the moment we're not playing that well. Obviously losing a lot of games, but still you're getting that inconsistency where we come out one half and we play really well on the front foot, and then we come out for the second half or the other way around, and we've got nothing about us. We're like passive, we're defensive, and is it the manager? Is it the players losing confidence or not being able to, get themselves to play better? Is it the fans' nervousness of the players at home? I think it's a mixture of everything. That's the problem that we have at the moment. We're in such a we don't have much confidence, right, in the team. or rather the team don't have much confidence. We as fans don't have much confidence, really. And we also have no confidence in the club, do we, really? So at the moment, it's just we're in this weird situation where we kind of hope that things are going to, that Tottenham are going to go out there and play well for a change. But we have no guarantee and kind of sometimes no idea what kind of Tottenham are going to come out. That's the problem.
No. That's the problem. So, yeah, well, bear in mind, like I said earlier, this is being recorded as well before Thomas Frank's press conference. So we might find out that likes of Porro and Van der Ven are available, which would be huge for Tottenham. And it's worth noting that Van der Ven, a couple of times in recent weeks, hasn't trained, but has then been okay. So fingers crossed, it'll be all good for this one. So, but I don't know what's going on there necessarily. But Philip, before we wrap up, can I get your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I'm going to predict the Spurs win.
Okay.
I'm going to go with. I think we're going to concede just because our defense, like Frankfurt's, is just not solid at the moment. I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for Spurs. I think tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a 2-1 win, but I would say again, if we as Spurs, if we cannot beat this Frankfurt side, knowing that a win gets us guaranteed top 8 in the Champions League, so that's immediate qualification, probably immediate confirmation of the extra money that we're going to get as well, right? Which will probably impact some players' bonuses.
Yes.
I reckon, all right, and it will. I'm led to believe that Thomas Frank is also incentivized about that. So if we qualify automatically top 8 for the knockout Champions League, the players and Thomas Frank will get an additional bonus. So if we cannot, bearing in mind that Frankfurt are out of the Champions League, they got nothing to play for tomorrow apart from pride in some shape or form. That's it. The new manager isn't there yet. They're out of Europe. The only thing they've got to play for is pride and the fact that it might be Frankfurt's last European game for 2 years, right? They might not qualify for Europe next year, in which case they're going to have, for the first time in ages, a European. Sorry, they won't have a European tour, next season. So if we can't, but honestly, even with the injuries that we've got, Solanke's back, Odegaard is playing well at the moment. Tell, of course, isn't there. Gray, Sarr probably, I guess, might play tomorrow. He's back, isn't he?
Should be back. Fingers crossed.
Xavi should be fit. Moani's
okay,
Moani may start the game if Solanke. Maybe I could see Solanke starting on the bench maybe tomorrow, possibly to come on, but could be the other way around. And we've still got our defence, right? So, plus the youth as well. I'd like to see Luca Williams, Barnett get some minutes maybe in this game. Why not? Maybe Janai Byfield to get some more minutes as well. But look, I mean, if we can't beat this Frankfurt team tomorrow, if we are the only team to come to play Frankfurt in January and not score 3 goals and not beat Frankfurt, again, it's typical Spursy, isn't it? It's Dr. Tottenham. That's the problem, isn't it? I think that's what, it wouldn't surprise anyone if that happens. And I'm just praying it doesn't, but we have to do it. We have to do this. But I'm predicting a win. I'm predicting a 2-1. I think we're going to play quite well tomorrow. And yeah, if we don't, then again, the Thomas Frank, in or out question is, well, it's straight away, isn't it, after the game tomorrow? Because if he wins
I personally think he's lost most of the fans already. That's my problem. I think he's lost them.
He has. He's lost all of the fans already, apart from a very small minority.
Not only the results, for me, it's the performances, it's the comments, it's the errors. And I like the guy, and being honest is good. But when you gloat about Arsenal most weeks, then you go Tottenham aren't a Champions League club, and then you question the manager of the past when you first respected him. Then that Arsenal Cup incident, then you say things like, if you come criticising me to my face, well, fans have done that. They've booed him, they've taunted him, they've chanted him, and it's the results are bad enough, but it's just the way we're playing football as well. And then he comes out after the game and goes, "We're really, really good," and then he's not even convincing, like when he says it's a bad result. He goes, "Yeah, maybe it's not the result we wanted, but we played incredibly well. I'm very proud." And I'm like, I know what he means in terms of it's different if he's saying, "Look, we're not too far away," but it's the fact that he thinks we're literally so close from being there. So he seems to be a bit in cuckoo land. He hasn't necessarily lost me. I will say that. I know after West Ham, we're all like, okay, this isn't good enough. And I conceded that West Ham, like for me, I would have understood if he went. I'd still give him the rest of the season because who really is going to come in this stage of the season and do a hugely significantly better job, let's just say, under these owners? Well, maybe be given the time. You weren't given the time under Levy. You'll be given the time now, but you won't be given the backing. That's my point. But
yeah, I kind of agree with you, Harry. But I've also flip-flopped on it a couple of times, to be honest. Like,
we all?
Yeah, I thought Thomas Frank should have gone after West Ham.
It would have made sense.
In retrospect, looking back, which is always great, isn't it? It's always lovely. It's always easier in looking back, isn't it? But like, probably he should have maybe gone after Bournemouth. I think looking back, but look, he's still here. The issue is for me is that at the moment there's too many fans. Like, as you said, the fan base is anti him. He's lost the fans. He's lost the away fans, and there's too much toxicity about Thomas Frank. And every game that we don't win, it's just going to get worse. And even if you want to hold on to him for the rest of the season, like, the noise in the background and the atmosphere is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I just wonder if it's possible to hold on to him to the end of the season. I kind of agree with you, Harry. I think right now, I'm like, well, what's the point of getting rid of him? Like, is there a guarantee that performances are going to improve? Is there a guarantee? There isn't. There is no guarantee. What are the interim options? Like, if you gave me 3 options of an interim where we know for sure that they would come and they maybe play football in a attacking, in a nicer way than Thomas Frank, and they've got a bit of a track record and they would be happy to stay till the end of the season, then maybe I'll pick one of them and say, yeah, actually, let's try it. But I don't
think
see
Ryan
any
Mason's an option. Because Mason, 18th to West Brom and 10 away defeats in a row, even though they played pretty football and were unlucky, you can't be taking that kind of risk with the situation we're in. Imagine us losing the next 10 away games. It would be down.
Mason won 10 away games in a row. Then he lost 10 away games in a row at West Brom. Like, if we hired Mason to replace Frank,
imagine that on top of where we are now, we'd be literally sinking.
And Mason went with Mason's he's one of our own, right? He's one of us. I love him, right? But I don't love him enough for him to come back as our interim manager, and be under pressure as well. Because if it doesn't work out for him, then it's going to be even more difficult for him to come back in the future potentially into the club. He's not a solution, right? And people like saying Harry Redknapp. Like, come on, guys, wake up. Harry Redknapp's almost 80, or he's 80, he's 78 or 79 or something.
Sherwood, Harry Redknapp, and Glenn Hoddle, and I respect all these people individually, but none of them really, for me,
come on.
I wouldn't want any.
The players, they're not going to respect them anyway. Imagine Timmy Tactic Sherwood coming in. Like,
imagine him with Pedro Porro. I mean, I like Porro. He constantly bashes him every week.
Imagine the rival fans as well. Like, all of our, all of your mates in college, that will support other teams. All of my mates, they'd all be like, it would get even worse. Tim Sherwood coming. Like, the problem is there's not many options. And, people like Xavi Hernandez, or
Xabi
whoever else,
Alonso.
right? They're not going to come in as an interim. And to be honest, like Xavi, there's lots of links with him, but no one even knows for sure if he would come to us in reality. Like there's been no confirmed 100% concrete link with Xavi to say, oh, we're in talks with him, or, oh yeah, Xavi would definitely be interested, but only from the summer onwards. I haven't seen a single concrete link. We're pulling his name out because he's been linked in the past and because he's available on the market, supposedly. But, so I kind of agree with you, Harry. I think there's no guarantee that anyone coming in or anyone from within the club, you could promote Wayne Burnett, or you could, promote, the other guy there, I forget his name, who's also kind of in the youth, into the head coach role, but zero guarantee, like the players, they also might not respect those guys, right? Just because, do you know what I mean? Like, they should do, but we know what these players are like. They're prima donnas, some of them, right? They don't give 100% sometimes, all the time, right? They're weak mentally, some of them, sometimes. So, maybe it is better just to keep Thomas Frank till the end of the season because, at least it's being consistent. At least he's got his processes in play. At least he's got his coaches in there. Like things are kind of moving. And again, I don't want to be too positive about it because some fans will just jump on me probably and say, "What are you talking about? Like we're all Thomas Frank out. We're going down." But there has been some glimmers of improvement over the last few weeks. Like our XG has gone up in games. We are creating more chances. With a bit more luck, we could have won some of those games. It's not been like the games have been an absolute disaster, a lot of them. Even Villa in the cup, the first half was shocking, but the second half, there was something there. We could have got something out of that game. West Ham, it wasn't good, but like with a bit of luck, almost, we would have got a result there. We could have beaten them. Brett, like at the weekend now, Burnley, we should have won that game. Dortmund, we did win the game, and we should have scored 4 or 5. So like, I can understand why Vinay or Lange or whoever else or any other fans who might say, well, look, let's just keep giving him the season because, the fact is, and sorry, my last point on that, Harry, is that we are still in the Champions League. Same as last season. If we weren't in the Europa League last season still, and I know that the Europa League is a much easier competition to win than the Champions League, right? We knew that. We know it. But we were still in the Europa League last season. And that's the only reason why Ange stayed on as manager, right? Ange would have got fired by Levy in January last year, a year ago. He would have got fired if we weren't still in the Europa League. That was the only reason why he was still in, and right now, the fact is that if we win tomorrow, we finish top 8 in the Champions League. And in some respects, that's probably the only reason why Thomas Frank is actually still in the job then, right? And we're probably not going to win the Champions League, right? It's kind of unlikely. But, and I'm not saying that we're going to get to the semi-finals or something, but the reality is if you get to knockouts, you could get a winnable game, right, in the last 16, hopefully. And if the players step up, we're in the quarterfinals. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that we're going to go and win the Champions League, but just like how people are saying, well, you're not going to get relegated. Stranger things have happened, but stranger things have also happened in other competitions like the Champions League, where you could somehow get into the semis, right? And maybe that's why they're clinging on to Frank as well, because they're like, well, he's done okay in the Champions League overall. The away record is great still overall in the league, but home isn't working. And maybe with Solanke getting more and more into fitness. But I don't know, Harry. I can't predict what Vinay and Lange are doing or saying because they're not really doing or saying anything at the moment, and they're not even buying any players, are they? If we were buying players right now, if we were like in negotiations to buy a top quality winger or maybe another midfielder, then there might also be some more optimism, right? that if they slot straight in and they improve the team, probably why not give Frank the rest of the season? Huh? Why not? Because it is unlikely we get relegated, isn't it? We're not.
Can you see it? The odds are now 12-1. They were 300-1 before a ball was kicked this season.
If I'm being honest, I don't think we're going to get relegated.
No,
because like we're gonna surely pick up enough points in those games where we need to somewhere along the line. And with the greatest of respect to West Ham or to Leeds or whoever else is down there, I don't think they're going to go on crazy runs winning every game. I know they've won 2 in a row. So I honestly can't see us going down. But again, it is a possibility. If our form gets so bad that we just lose every game, and they do end up winning the games, then we have an issue. And look, I mean, sorry, I feel like I was rambling on a bit now, but like the problem that Vinay and ENIC and Lange have got us into the situation, really, through, lack of decisiveness, probably around their decisions.
Window's about to close. We've got worse. And like the reality is, Vinay left Arsenal, they got better. Johan Lange left Villa, they got better. Both have joined Tottenham, we've got worse. And Frank at Brentford, I liked Frank, but he's now left Brentford. And they certainly haven't gone backwards. If anything, they've gone forward since he's left. And Keith Andrews has been appointed. Of course, I think he's learned from Frank, and some say learning from the master. Then Frank's come to Tottenham, we've gone down. So I'm thinking, hang on, what's going on here?
Do you know what? I haven't really thought about this actually properly, but I actually think that Vinay is doing a terrible job. I think Vinay, from what I can see, of course, like I don't know everything. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. But looking on it from the outside, knowing the history of ENIC, but also knowing Vinay, thinking about it, Vinay was a Levy appointment, right? Vinay and Levy kind of love each other, don't they? There was all those videos of them, interviews last season of them kind of sucking up to each other, that they've known each other for so many years. And, Levy's admired Vinay and Vinay's admired Levy. I'm pretty sure that it was Levy's appointment, Vinay, and that ENIC per se didn't have much input into it. And I actually wonder, and it's only, to be honest, it's just come to my mind now. I actually wonder, because I think that Vinay is struggling with ENIC. I think that he's struggling to, to build relationships maybe with the powers that be at ENIC. In terms of getting decisions made on a higher level there or getting money approved. Because Levy was the main man before. And I actually wonder whether there's a chance that Vinay could actually be the fall guy in the summer. Not now, but I actually wonder whether there's a chance that Vinay actually leaves Spurs in the summer. And ENIC, assuming that, Joe Lewis's kids are still kind of the main guys in charge together with Tavistock Group, I wonder whether they may consider to actually bring in their own CEO, maybe new CEO. Who knows? I mean, Vinay's got a contract just like anyone else. He can be, I don't know how long his contract is, or whether he even has because for a CEO, it's a bit different, right? Like
the club don't announce the length. I mean, they wouldn't have for someone like Vinay anyway, but they don't. But they don't do it with players now anymore. Like Sousa just says long-term deal. We have no idea how long.
I don't think Vinay probably has a contract duration. Like most CEOs or most employees would just have a contract, right? And they'll have a notice period. And that's what I imagine Vinay would have. Same as Lange. He won't be limited to 2-year contract, I don't think. So I wonder whether, it'd be quite easy to get rid of someone like Vinay. They'd have to pay him off, give him some cash. But it just came to my mind. I just wonder about it because I don't think he's doing a very good job. I don't think he's particularly liked by the fans right now either. And probably things like his ex-Arsenal background don't help in situations like this now, right, where we're doing badly, because it's another thing to bring up against him, isn't it? Really, rightly or wrongly,
And
but
after
that's
that
how it
Frank
it
Arsenal Cup
is.
incident, fans is a bit lazy, but I get why they do it. They look at it and go, "Oh, Vinay and Frank, they love Arsenal destroying the club," because neither of them really are doing a good job as things stand. So again, you put two and two together.
You know, I again, and this isn't to do with the Frankfurt game tomorrow. Right? We're digressing away a bit, but I actually wonder. I actually wonder. You know, maybe some of the listeners or people watching this are still interested anyway, right? Because we're talking about the future of Spurs. But like,
Yeah,
I wonder whether it really is going to be something like Poch coming back in the summer, to unite the fan base, but
I think
also
so.
a new sporting director and also a new CEO. Let's see. It's all speculation, but it
It'll
wouldn't
all be
surprise
PR
me.
stunts. Nothing will change, I don't think. It's just a PR stunt. Looks good. Like with Vinay, all these like empty words. I mean, he's saying the right thing about the wage bill and about how we're not competing at
So,
other clubs. We don't spend the money. That's how we all feel. But okay, now's an opportunity to address it in January. Boom, nothing. In fact, it's been worse than previous windows.
do you
I
know,
don't get it.
regardless of Thomas Frank, the reality is, even if it's Vinay and Lange doing the stuff now, they're still in their roles. And Vinay came out 2 weeks ago before the Villa game, with that interview, saying that they're going to increase the wage bill significantly, saying that they've got money to spend and they want to spend on the right players. Now, even if Vinay and Frank were to leave the club in the summer, and Lange, they could still buy players now that fit into, let's say, someone like Poch's way of playing, or a manager like Poch. Do you know what I mean? Like, we could still go out there and buy a winger, a top-class winger, or we could go out there and buy someone like Ademola Lookman, who's available for 35 million euros only, and he will fit under whatever manager comes potentially next season, And they haven't done that. And as it looks like right now, they're not going to do it unless if there's significant, movement at the weekend or at the end of this week. And it's no excuse for them to say the only reason we're not doing it is because of the uncertainty around Thomas Frank. Because that is them, how do you say, that's a dereliction of duty, in my opinion. And that's where something is just not right here right now at the moment. The fans are upset. The protest at the weekend change for Tottenham is going to be probably the biggest one yet. A lot of fans have their own opinion on whether, it's a good thing or not. But, the fact is it's going to probably be the biggest one yet. And look, I mean, the game tomorrow, I think it's very important for Tottenham and for Thomas Frank and probably for Vinay, because, again, if we can get automatic qualification to top 8, that probably changes a few things. Like, number one, we know that we're getting probably more money straight away, so that might impact signings. It might mean that if we were to get rid of Thomas Frank now, that whoever comes in potentially knows that they've got Champions League knockout coming. It means that players get bonuses possibly. And maybe just gives a bit of clarity. If we lose tomorrow, or to be honest, if we draw against Frankfurt tomorrow and we don't play well, and we don't make some good moves, and we don't qualify for the top 8, then we're going into City at the weekend in an even worse situation. And again, keep Thomas Frank to the end of the season, okay. But at some point, you can't keep him because the fans, the noise online, the online podcast that we're doing, that everyone else is doing, are all on the same subject matter. And I don't think that Thomas Frank can survive that. That's my feeling. That's all down to Vinay, Lange, and probably Enoch, but mainly Vinay. That's down to his lack of decisiveness around either dealing with the Thomas Frank situation early, or now supporting Thomas Frank even more, right, by signing 2 more players. Because he could do that, right? He could still support Thomas Frank more now. Probably a lot of the fans wouldn't be happy if we keep Thomas Frank till the end of the season. But if he supports him now with more signings, there's no reason probably not to give Thomas Frank to the end of the season and then make a decision in the summer. I think that's the reality. That's how it is.
Is the lack of January activity showing maybe they aren't confident? It seems like they're going by game basis. That's uncertainty is unhealthy.
Yeah, but again, that's no way to run a football club. And that is a
It's not.
That
It's
is
uncertain.
That is a devastating reflection on, in my opinion, Vinay's running of the football club in the last 6 months since taking over. I don't think you can get away from that. Johan Lange, I don't know, like people get on his back, but he's supposed to be the youth, like young player kind of sporting director, isn't he? And because of the Paratici situation, I think again, my last point on that, by the way, Harry, is I think Vinay has completely screwed it up with the Paratici situation. Like, I think as soon as they knew that he was, flirting with Fiorentina and obviously wanting to go back to Italy, right? Because he's apparently, he got divorced or he's going through a divorce, right? And he's got a new girlfriend or something apparently in Italy, right? Which is why he wants to go back there. Apparently that's the story or something like that, right? But maybe it's more complicated than that. As soon as it became clear that he was going to leave the club, in my opinion, they should have put him on gardening leave, right? They should have said, you're out. We're going to pay you off till end of January or whatever it is, but you're gone. And either Lange is going to do it by himself, or we even hire someone short term, get an interim in to help. Do you know what I mean? To like work on transfers and stuff. That's more realistic actually nowadays in football than getting an interim manager in some respects. And I think Vinay has completely and utterly dropped the ball there completely, because at the moment, it's a farce, Harry. It's a farce. So
Agree with you.
It's we've moaned about Daniel Levy over the years, haven't we? We've moaned about Enoch, but there's always been a certain respect for Levy, right, in terms of what he's done at the club or what he did in terms of building up the infrastructure. He's made a lot of mistakes, probably, but he was too hands on himself. He thought that he knew about football, but actually he doesn't. But he's a great businessman and he's a good leader, I think, still, right? He brought leadership. He just doesn't understand football. Like Daniel Levy could have done it so much better. But, right now where we are, we're far worse than anywhere where we were under Levy's Enoch, I believe. I think right now we're, because the new board, or Joe Lewis's kids, because they haven't put the money up for transfers yet, because we have zero proof that they mean business. That's why the fans right now are like, what's going on? We've sold Brennan Johnson. We've only spent 15 million.
No replacement.
Harry, we spent 15 million this window net. 15. That's it. And we're by the looks of it, we're flogging Kinski to West Ham with a buy option. There's nothing more to say. But again, we can talk about it all day, and these aren't related to the game tomorrow, but they kind of are, actually, because tomorrow's game, I think, is more important than some people think. I believe. For Frankfurt, it's not important, really.
Well, for Tottenham as well, if we don't go through automatically, that just adds pressure on Thomas Frank, because make no mistake about it, the only front we're really competing on or doing well in, let's just say, is the Champions League. That if we were out the Champions League, Frank wouldn't be in the job. That is my honest belief. So it doesn't mean we go out, of course, if we lose. But if we don't go through automatically, it's not a pretty look, really. It's 2 more games on top of, again, we talk about potential going down, or I don't like to say it as a potential getting relegated. I prefer to say it as a potential of getting dragged into something we don't want to get dragged into, meaning we could get dragged into a relegation battle. I don't think that's outrageous to say. I think it's outrageous maybe to say we'll go down. But again, adding 2 more games, that I think means you pick up less points, or it means more injuries, one way or the other. So I think it's huge, as you said, for Frankfurt as well. It's big in that aspect as well. But I have to see how it goes. But Philip, thank you very much for joining me. We covered a lot there. Where can people follow you on social media and talk to people as well? Any last minute info or anything you want to say ahead of the game?
Yeah, I'm mainly on X. You can find me at Frankfurt Spurs. Please add and follow. I tweet mainly about Tottenham, Bundesliga, Frankfurt, obviously, but mainly Spurs. I am actually on the board of an official Tottenham Hotspur supporters club here in Germany that me and a few mates here have set up, South Germany Spurs. So we've got about 100, 120 members, I think, now. Good. We're growing fast, which is good. We're just trying to, most of those members are, local, German members as well. So got a few Brits in there as well. Actually, we've got lots of nationalities in there, but we're trying to obviously make Spurs more visible to the local kind of population here, which is good. And yeah, look, to any Spurs fans watching this who are coming out to Frankfurt today or tomorrow, bring your waterproofs, because it looks like it's going to be a potentially a very wet one. And the meeting place, I think, for most Spurs fans will be O'Reilly's Irish pub, which is the biggest Irish pub in Germany. It's right opposite the main Frankfurt train station on the corner. That will be open, I think, from 11 o'clock tomorrow, and it's open right now. I know I've seen quite a few Spurs fans walking around here in Frankfurt already today. The team bus has arrived as well, so everyone's getting ready. But yeah, go there or head to the main town square, possibly. There's some bars around there where there'll be a few fans normally. And I would just say to everyone, take extra care when walking around the kind of main station area in Frankfurt. It's not the best area, which some fans will know probably from coming here during the European Championships with England. Keep your wits about you in the area there. But, and also when you go to the stadium on the way, keep an eye out, because there are some Eintracht Frankfurt ultras around who can get sometimes a bit aggressive. Although generally speaking, for games like this, it's normally very relaxed. It's only for big grudge matches or where, Frankfurt have got a history potentially with a certain team that things can still get a bit spicy. I know that when West Ham came here a couple of years ago, it was pretty bad as an example. But to be fair, whenever Spurs have come in the last 2 seasons, everything's been fine. But I would still say to all fans, keep your wits about you. If you're wearing colours and stuff, consider maybe hiding them a bit, like on the way to the stadium. Once you're in the stadium, obviously it's all barriered off, etc. There's normally a police escort as well from the station. There might be a special train going to the stadium as well. So anyways, I'm sure most fans coming out have been to away games before anyway. So you know what the deal is, but just keep an eye out as always. And as I said, O'Reilly's is probably the main meeting point tomorrow. So yeah, let's have a good one.
Thank you. Yes, have a good one indeed. And fingers crossed. On that note, thank you very much. And a massive come on, you Spurs.